Good morning. I'm John Gutman, Executive Director of New Covenant Center in Stamford, Connecticut. Welcome to the 16th Annual Celebrity Breakfast, which this year will focus our efforts on continuing to serve the hungry, the homeless, and the jobless during this extraordinary time. On Sunday, March 15th, we served our last meal to 80 guests inside our cafe and soup kitchen. On Monday, the 16th, we transitioned to a grab-and-go lunch and dinner service where our guests lined up on Richmond Hill Avenue to get their meals. It was a sight that we never envisioned, and it looked and felt undignified to me, quite frankly, something our staff and volunteers work hard not to present inside our center every day. But the reality was, and the reality is, we needed to provide a safe environment for everyone, including our guests, so that we could continue to serve the meals to those most in need. New Covenant Center is the only daily cafe soup kitchen 365 days a year within 8 to 10 miles of Stamford. Our food pantry continues to open 3 days a week and one Saturday morning every month, in which we allow 1 to 2 guests maximum to shop with a staff person or volunteer, always wearing a mask and gloves and showing the required distancing. Of course, after they're done shopping, we wipe down shopping carts and turn and the armchairs as well. Last time at this year, New Covenant Center provided an average of 175 lunches and dinners every day. In the last 7 weeks, on a daily basis, we are now averaging 500 to 700 meals and sandwiches per day. These meals are not only going to our guests who line up outside, but also to hundreds of clients of partners, partner agencies who are also experiencing changes in their operations. We provide meals and sandwich bags to the 2 overnight shelters in Spirica and Pacific House, as well as the Immigration Center in Stamford, Building 1 Community, and our landlord and partner, Always Reaching for Independence. We are accomplishing this with only 10 people in the center every day. Our chefs and staff have been incredible in their output. We are now running a different operation at New Covenant Center. And we wouldn't be able to sustain all of this if it wasn't for the volunteers at home. The hundreds of volunteers who are staying in a safe environment during this crisis, but they are helping us. They're providing hot meals, they're providing sandwiches, and delivering it to us so that we could continue providing 500 to 700 meals each day. Additionally, churches and other groups are conducting weekly food drives to benefit the food pantry at New Covenant Center. A few additional thank yous. First, to our sponsors of this 16th Annual Celebrity Breakfast. From individuals to families to foundations to corporations, we thank all of you for continuing to support New Covenant Center. And today, because of the generosity and talents of so many NBC sports staff, this event is coming to you from the production studios of NBC in Stamford. Thank you. And I would like to thank our speakers who will be on with us in a few minutes, Diocese of Bridgeport Bishop Frank Caggiano and Temple Sinai of Stamford Rabbi Jay Telrav. Thank you for joining us. Now on to the program. We are very proud to announce that this year's recipient of the 5th Annual Celebrity Breakfast Founders Award is Sally Candell-Kalman. Sally started volunteering almost 30 years ago when she was the chairperson of social action at Temple Sinai in Stamford. 28 years later, synagogue members continued to prepare and serve a monthly dinner at our center. At that time, Sally started what is an annual Christmas Day dinner at New Covenant for over 150 guests of our program. These are more than dinners. It requires galvanizing dozens of Temple Sinai members to shop and to prepare, and Rabbi, to schlep the dozens of pans of food and to serve the meals, as well as decorating the cafe. And Bishop Caggiano, you may be pleased to know that Sally's husband on these Christmas Day dinners dressed up as Santa Claus for many years. Sally also was a board member of the New Covenant Center Board of Advisors for 8 years, as well as working on fundraising committees for our program. Sally was the Stamford Advocates Community Leader of the Year in 1997 and is currently a realtor at Berkshire Hathaway in Stamford. To the thousands of people that you have touched, Sally, for nearly 30 years of volunteering at New Covenant Center, you are truly a grande dame, a leading lady of our program. Congratulations. I am now very pleased that Stamford Mayor David Martin is able to join us today. Mayor Martin and the city of Stamford have been wonderful supporters of New Covenant Center, and the mayor has visited us many times, most notably about 3 weeks ago when he brought 200 masks for the protection of our staff and volunteers. I will now invite David to speak, and I think the area is nice and clean. Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Thank you, John. First of all, most important question is, here we are while wearing suits. I guarantee you not a single person is wearing sweatpants on their feet. We're all wearing our full suits, not just sweatpants underneath. I have often said at many functions like this one, and at the celebrity breakfasts that we've had for the few years, that one of the blessings that I have as mayor is strong, well-run charities, serving people in the community that have needs that I can't address, and sometimes it's the money, but frequently it's because of the uniqueness of every soul that needs something special, and the charities can do things that we in government just can't do. And among the very, very best is New Covenant Center. And during this tragedy, this crisis that we all know about, they've done more with less than almost anyone else. They're not just supporting the regular clients who have now swelled, as you heard. They're going and supporting other charity organizations who are also struggling to meet the increased demand and in an increasing difficult time. As you just heard, New Covenant House has to dramatically change their operations because of how they did things, and at the same time tripling the demand for those who are in need of food. So again, my blessings grow in the middle of this crisis. And so I say, thank you to New Covenant Center. It is someone who has made a huge, huge difference to our community, from the individuals and their families and their friends and their loved ones to our community as a whole. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit religiously. We have the rabbi and the bishop coming on in just a moment. If they disagree with me, perhaps you should listen to them instead of me, but I'll tell you what I think. Our Creator gave us many different qualities. One of them is generosity of spirit. And if this is a test, this is a test to find out if we still have the generosity of spirit in times where there are tragedies all around us. And I don't believe that our Creator personally creates miracles as much as He gives us the opportunity to make miracles. And we're all sitting here at home or wherever it was, watching the TV set and thinking how tough this terrible coronavirus has been on our families and in many cases on our incomes. The test is, can we make a miracle happen? And I believe that you can. You can be part of a miracle, giving more when the need is greatest, letting that generosity of spirit that is imbued in all of us come out in ways that haven't been imagined before. And it will make you feel better, and it'll make me feel better. it will help save lives. And you'll never meet the individuals whose lives you save. And if you were to discuss with them current events, I'm sure you would have disagreements. But I ask you on behalf of our community and those in need to give what you can. This New Covenant Center is so important and so helpful. There are so many volunteers that are giving their time, but they need dollars too. And I am so proud to have people like them in our community and people like you that can help make this difference. So thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Mike Donahue. I'm the Executive Director of Catholic Charities. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Mayor Martin, thank you for the work that you and your team are doing during this COVID-19 crisis. We are grateful for your leadership. We also appreciate your staunch support of the mission of New Covenant Center. Just a few words on our organization. Catholic Charities has been serving people of all faiths in Fairfield County for 104 years. We are one of the largest private providers of social services in the county. We manage more than 30 programs providing services to people in need without regard to religion, race, or the ability to pay. We are especially proud of our work here at New Covenant Center, an interfaith project with members of many different religions working together focused on our common interest in helping our neighbors in need. Before I introduce today's speakers, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to our dedicated employees and numerous volunteers who keep New Covenant Center running 365 days a year. First, I want to thank John Gutman for his strong leadership during this crisis. John has worked tirelessly to forge partnerships with Stamford area nonprofits in need of food resources. Even in the darkest days, when we had to cancel the majority of our 800 yearly volunteers for safety reasons, he found a way to promise help to other groups that needed meals. John, your desire to help anyone in need makes me very proud to be your colleague. I also want to give a huge shout out to our dedicated employees at New Covenant Center. While most of our community was sequestered in their homes, this team has been running into the fire every day to help the most vulnerable members of our community. They've been nothing short of heroic, and then we asked them to triple their daily volume of meals provided. So why do they do this? It's certainly not because we pay them huge salaries. They do it because they believe that no one should ever go hungry. And that's why we're here today, to support our shared mission to help many of the often forgotten members of our community. So without any further ado, let me introduce our two outstanding speakers. Rabbi Jay Telrav holds a degree in psychology from the University of Michigan and a master's of Hebrew literature from Hebrew Union College in New York, where he also received his rabbinic ordination. He lived in Israel for more than 3 years, studying, volunteering, and supervising archaeological digs. Rabbi Telrav joined Temple Sinai as its spiritual leader in 2012. Since that time, he has focused on connecting the community's members to what they love and what they need. He spends a great amount of his time and attention on the youth of the congregation. In the wider community, Rabbi Telrav has created meaningful relationships with other congregations in the area and has been a vocal partner in the Interfaith Clergy Alliance of Stamford. Rabbi Telrav lives in Stamford with his wife Julie and their children Amitai and Neely. Rabbi Telrav is a strong supporter of New Covenant Center, leading the invocation at our celebrity breakfast for the past several years. He was also at New Covenant Center on Christmas Day with his family and members of the congregation, serving the meal so the Christian volunteers could have the day off. Rabbi Jay, thank you for being with us today. Bishop Caggiano. Anyone who's been around Bishop Frank Caggiano for more than 5 minutes knows that he is Italian and was born and raised in Brooklyn. He attended Regis High School and Yale University before he transferred to Cathedral College of the Immaculate Conception, where he graduated summa cum laude. He was ordained to the priesthood in 1987. After serving as auxiliary bishop in Brooklyn, he was installed as the 5th bishop of the Diocese of Bridgeport in September 2013. Bishop Frank has gained national and international notoriety as a speaker and catechist. Similar to Rabbi Jay, he has a keen interest in engaging young people in their faith. Bishop Frank has been invited by the Pope to speak on several occasions at World Youth Day. He was one of 5 American bishops elected to represent the United States at the Vatican's General Assembly on Young People and Faith, held this past October in Rome. Bishop Caggiano was recently named chairman of the board of Catholic Relief Services, the Catholic Church's international humanitarian aid organization serving the poor and vulnerable globally. We are very blessed to have such a charismatic leader in the Diocese of Bridgeport. Thank you both for joining us today. Bishop Frank, I believe you're going to lead us off.
Well, first, Mike, thank you for that great introduction. And allow me to say thank you for your great leadership at Catholic Charities. You came at a time when who would have thought we would be in the midst of a pandemic, and you have done just remarkable work. So for all the people who are being served, thank you for your leadership in those kind words. Rabbi Jay, it's great to be with you this morning.
It sure is. Yeah, we had one chance to meet, but it was virtually, and this is much better. I agree with what Mike said. 5 minutes with you is worth an awful lot.
It demands aspirin, but I mean, you could get over it, right? But nonetheless, it's great to be with you, and thank you for being here for the New Covenant Center. It's a charity, it's a cause, it's part of the heart of Stanford. Your support of it, the members of your congregation, particularly on Christmas Day, what a great gesture of charity and solidarity. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I will, as it's so uncomfortable to receive gratitude for the things that we do for others, we often try to turn it around and downplay it. My tendency is to say to New Covenant Center, thank you for making it so easy for us to do a mitzvah, to be a part of God's commandedness.
So before we began, we asked the question, why are we here? Like, why a Catholic bishop and a Jewish rabbi in this moment, given the unique moment we're living, what is it that you and I are going to share with those who are watching with us? And allow me just to start, right? I think there are more questions than answers now in most people's minds. The uncertainty of the life we live now. Whatever normal was is gone. Whatever the new normal is, we're not exactly sure. And that raises some deep-seated questions of faith, right, in both of our traditions. So how do we answer those questions, right? Perhaps the first would be this whole mystery of evil in our midst and suffering. And there's so much around us, whether it's the suffering of individuals who have been afflicted, or the consolation and grief people are looking for when they bury their loved ones, or just the uncertainties of life. So I think we could each take a stab at it. Why don't you start first?
You know, I appreciate the way you framed it. The fact that there are more questions than answers is absolutely correct. It is in many ways no different than ever. And it's one of the things that I've always appreciated about our tradition is the insistence on asking those questions, even in the knowledge that there aren't going to be satisfying answers. I'm amazed at how much it seems our children in our Jewish schools take that for granted. I often send them off to go to their religious school classes, and I always say to them, and what are you supposed to do today? And they all chime in, ask a good question. And they assume that their teachers are going to have answers because they're asking questions that are appropriate for 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds. But now we find ourselves in times where the questions are harder, and we know there are no answers.
Right. And the answers are not always obvious, right? Absolutely. So one could ask the question, dear friends of mine who have fallen away from faith, good people, will say to me, so Frank, where is God in all of this? Where do I see his face? Where do I see his presence? This is your business. You tell me where. And again, it's a question that really provokes us to look really deeply in our own hearts. Because we all believe God does not abandon his people. Whether we are in times of challenge or times of joy, he's present. But the signs of his life may be different. So the part of the answer that I gain consolation is we, like St. Teresa said, we are the hands and the feet and the heart of God in the world. So sometimes God is staring you right in the face. someone who comes forward to be that helping hand. Or at New Covenant Center, who are volunteers who are helping those who are in need, giving them food to eat, giving them hope, right? That's where God is. It's literally in front of your face. He's in front of your face. But you need the eyes to see it, right? And that's part of what we have to do, is kind of reorient ourselves in this time, not to take for granted what we oftentimes do take for granted, where God may be present.
It reminds me of a terrific Hasidic story. The rabbi is walking through town with a friend who is also a good man and has fallen away from tradition. His profession is that he's a soap maker. And they're walking through town, and the man says to the rabbi, "Look at all these people. They attend your synagogue every Shabbat. They pray. They do what you tell them to do religiously. But over here, here's one swindling another in business, and over there's another one who's being bad to his family. Rabbi, explain to me, how does all that you bring to the community, how does it work? It seems to me it's not working one bit." And the rabbi says, "Look at the children over there in the gutter. They're filthy. You're a soap maker. Why is your soap not doing anything for those children?" And the man says, "Well, Rabbi, the soap only works if you use it." And aha, is his answer. So too with our relationship to our tradition and God and the translation. You taught me a word beforehand. You used the word catechist, and I asked you about the specific understanding, because I've heard the word before, and you explained that it's the translation of the teaching into action. Or please correct me if I didn't quite get it right.
Yes, into ordinary life. It's applying it to your life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm seeing some of the most remarkable translation taking shape in these last couple months as circumstances change. There's an expression that we all use in every tradition, every culture. You meet someone and you say, "How are you?" And the answer is, "Fine, how are you?" Or some version of that. But if you pause and you look them really deeply in the eye and you say, "No, how are you?" they realize, oh, you mean it. You want to know the real answer. And similarly, there's an expression in Hebrew in the Torah, in the Bible, where God will say, rather than "where are you?" he'll say, "Ayeka." Where are you? And the answer in that moment is Hineni. I hear you, God, and here I am. I'm right here. In other words, I'm ready to answer your call. And I wonder what you've seen in terms of people in your spheres that have said, Hineni, I'm here. You told me a couple of beautiful stories before we got started. What are you seeing that just makes you proud?
Well, one in particular is I have seen young people stepping forward to serve. You know, a lot of our young people are home from college. They're back from university, basically supposed to be isolating and hunkering down at home. But the youthful spirit is very hard to harness, right? And to keep intact. But nonetheless, they have come forward so that older individuals who are more at risk can stay home, many of whom are the bulk of our volunteers, tend to be older individuals. So I've seen a youthfulness, I've seen a generosity that gives me great encouragement. You know, we've all been striving, and we'll talk about later how to engage young people, which is a mighty task. But this crisis has given young people a reason to step up, and they are stepping up. But people will say to me, so I'm home. So you say, I'm going to be the hands and feet of God in the world, but I'm told to stay home. So a question, so how do I do this? And I must confess, I'm very active. I like to be active, and I travel all over. When this began, I found it very difficult to stay in four walls. We chatted about that before. And it was a time of real quiet and introspection for me personally. And of course, I'm a man of prayer, as you are. And I rediscovered that prayer is a way of serving other people as well, is to lift them up in prayer before the Lord and their hopes and dreams and challenges by name, because we had the time, right? Yep. We had a lot more time. And that's a great service that I would recommend to anyone who's listening to us. That is a great act of self-service, is to spend this time with the Lord and name the needs and trust that he'll do it, right, in his time.
we were discussing the tendency, the pattern of clergy people who deliver sermons.
Oh, homilies.
That,
You want to talk about homilies?
Yeah. And how natural it is that we deliver the sermons or homilies that we ourselves need to hear.
We
And
always preach to ourselves, don't we, in the
We do.
end?
We
We
do.
always preach to ourselves. You look at the Gospels, for example. It's interesting. In the Gospel of St. John, the first words out of Jesus' mouth that are recorded are a question. What are you looking for? To the disciples on the road. And all the parables that Jesus taught were simple stories that related simple truths that could be relatable to anyone. So when we preach, I'm a firm believer that many times, maybe all the time, I'm preaching to myself first, right? That I'm not totally converted. I need to take to heart my own words. And to the extent that people glimpse who I am is a good thing, provided I don't get into the way of the Lord. So you have a congregation, you've had it for a number of years. So the members of your congregation have gotten to know you very well through your preaching. And they know your faults, and they know your gifts, as they know mine as bishop as I travel around. But that means we're family, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Last year, my family experienced some health surprises, and the moment that the family that you just described demonstrated itself was proof that it was not a one-way street. It was not just me serving them, but in reverse, them serving me. And it was incredibly reassuring to know that we had the support of our family when we needed it. And I had a conversation yesterday with a young man whose world has been rocked by this isolation, this coronavirus, his employment, but his spirit, not one bit.
Right.
His attitude of positive opportunity, the realization of the things you just said, that he is God's hands here in the world and his opportunity to serve. He himself articulated that he was not such an active volunteer before this. And that he looks forward to a return to normalcy, save the role that he plays. He sees that his senior community members have been the ones who've served mostly before this, but he looks forward to joining them side by side when it's possible again.
You know, there's another insight that has really been resonating in my mind when I pray. That is a direct consequence of this moment we're living in. My father always used to say to me, there but for the grace of God could go you, when he saw someone in need. And of course, growing up, oh yeah, Dad, fine. But isn't it true now that the veneer that we're indestructible and that society is indestructible has just been lifted off? I mean, the frailty of human life, the frailty of society, our interdependence, the solidarity that should mark our life, suddenly now that's at the forefront. It's inescapable, right? So what we take for granted, we no longer can take for granted. So this is the insight that and it's a challenge to me. It's a challenge, please God, to anyone who is willing to take serious what Pope Francis talks about. Francis says you need to smell like your sheep, right? To care for them, not from a position of a power to that who has no power, but to recognize we're both equally powerless. We're both frail. And your frailty, if you're hungry, is evident now, but a few years from now, I may be on that line looking for food. So while the opportunity is there, to smell like the sheep is to rub literally heart to heart. Tell you a quick story. When I worked for McGraw-Hill, before I went to the seminary, I was the sales rep for Greg for all of New York City, which I had a grand old time. And I used to take the F train to Rockefeller Center. And there was a homeless man who literally made his home in the station. And I, in my good Catholic upbringing, thought, this charity here, I should help. So I gave $1 every day. And that appeased my conscience. I did my thing, right? Until I realized, many years later, that very gesture of reaching down and handing someone $1 gives this image of a have and a have not. and it came flooding back to me at the start of this pandemic, that have not, we're all have-nots. If I could go back and redo that, I would. But it's a life lesson now for us to go forward. And the New Covenant Center treats everyone with dignity, everyone with respect, everyone equally on both sides, because that's who we are, right?
I spoke with the CEO of the Jewish Federation yesterday, and we were talking about the ways in which the community is really just rallying to help. And she asked whether I've had very many requests for financial support from our community. And I had to be honest and say, no, not yet. I've had some, but not a lot. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you just said. To some extent, the impact has not been felt fully yet. But to a large extent, it has been an absolute shock to people to realize that I, too, am a have-not. I had a conversation yesterday with an upcoming, a girl who's going to celebrate soon becoming a bat mitzvah. And she wanted to know, was it going to be possible to have her bat mitzvah the way that she had envisioned it for many years in the synagogue with her friends and family gathered? And I had to explain to her that that part of what we do as training is we teach you how to act like an adult. We call you an adult, so we teach you how to act like one. And this is a moment of uncertainty that to some extent we adults have learned is a part of life. And now she's learning it too. I can't give her any guarantees. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee that we won't be gathering in the synagogue when her service happens. But the reminder that we are all subject to a system much more powerful than what we thought we could control is one of those silver linings that I find everywhere right now. This is a horrendously bad situation. And sometimes it's those situations that teach us how to make the most meaning. I won't say that there are wonderful outcomes of this, but there are the opportunities to make meaning, and I'm seeing that all over the place. We've been bad-mouthing millennials for some time now. They're selfish. They're they have no work ethic. I don't think that's true at all. I think that our millennials are driven by a sense of purpose. They want their lives to mean something desperately, and they're not going to hang around in a place receiving a message that doesn't speak to that. And this seems to be proof of that. The millennials that have stepped forward in the way you described before to particularly help our seniors has been just so reassuring.
That's very well said. I absolutely agree with you. I think the millennials have been given a bad rap. And sometimes I say to myself, if they are being accused of being self-absorbed, I say to myself, who created the environment that taught that lesson in the first place? Is it not us who are a bit older who kind of created that? I mean, the mayor spoke very beautifully about generosity of spirit. It's beautiful. And that's the call to action. Right now, it has unveiled the self-absorption that we were all tempted at some time or another to fall into. Okay? And the ordinariness of life and the routine of life is usually centered around our own needs. So there's almost an inevitability that happens. So this is the time where people of all faiths and just goodwill, even if a person has no religious faith, to say, well, really, what is my life all about? And there's a difference between something that is a good and a value in my life and something that has perhaps even greater value now that I need to embrace. And we spoke about that before we started. And how do you organize those goods? So, typical in New York, you may have seen the photos this past weekend in Central Park and Prospect Park, and I even saw it in Trumbull. People aren't about, it's lovely weather, no masks, socializing, frisbee, all the rest. And you say to yourself, what are you doing? What are you doing? But in a sense, it's not a selfishness. It really is, it's being lost in the moment. But this calls us out of the moment, right? And that's why it's great that in some way, shape, or form, we have this forum. today.
Well, so you mentioned the personal needs and the communal needs, and now I'm being selfish. I want to learn a little bit from you in the Catholic Church. What are your conversations centering around when you contemplate May 21st? We're scheduled to move into phase.
Yes.
I guess this is phase 1
Yes.
of our reopening, and you shared a little bit about what the Catholic Church has in mind, and you might say a word about that. But I'm also interested in how the conversations happen, the balance of our need to return to the things that the religious forms that give us comfort and certainty, against the other needs, the needs for safety and
Right. It's a concept. I've had conversations with the pastors. I've had 2 Zoom meetings with all the pastors, and another one is coming up. And we're focused in on how to do a return to worship in the safest way possible. It is of paramount importance. It's the highest good. Keep everyone safe and healthy. But walking with one leg is kind of tough. So you have private prayer, but we want communal prayer in both our traditions. That's who we are, to come together as a community. So there is that really gaping hole. So we're imagining returning to worship in more creative ways, outside, perhaps allowing people to stay in cars, which I would never have imagined doing. But, necessity is the mother of all invention. And as long as we could start gradually in baby steps, bringing people together, it will help fill the other half of the human desire, right? Is to be one with God and one with each other. But again, it's like everything else. We're going to write the book as we go along because it's very complicated. It's the same is true for yourself. Yeah.
It's awfully difficult. We're looking ahead at our big moments coming up, and I was on a conference Zoom yesterday with a whole bunch of rabbis, and we were talking about, one way or another, this Rosh Hashanah is going to be a first in history.
Yes.
Never before have our people done this, and yet there have been many times where we've had to do something we've never done before. And
Well, Easter was an Easter I will never forget.
Yeah.
Never forget. I think we have questions we need to go through.
terrific.
You start.
All right, so we've received some questions that we'll take a look at. Here's number one. I'll read it for everyone. The New Covenant Center has been serving the hungry and the homeless for 41 years. They've made a big push to encourage the next generation to volunteer and to pay it forward. It appears both the Catholic and Jewish faiths have ongoing challenges to keep teenagers, post-confirmation and post-bar and bat mitzvah, engaged in their church and synagogue. So the two of us, what are our messages to the young people about the importance of helping those most in need? And could this be one way to keep them involved with their respective faiths?
Well, since you read the question, I'll start the answer. I think it is absolutely one of the prime ways we could re-engage young people. See, what I find in young people is there's no animosity towards organized religion. It's just indifference. You know, they come from a generation where they need to see the, as you said very well, the value in being part of a community of which they're not creating. Since online you could create your own community. So we oftentimes, and I'll speak personally, we have failed to give a compelling reason for young people to be part of a community of faith. But this is one of the prime ways we can, is to connect real need with real desire. And say, this is not an ancillary to Catholic community. It's at the heart of Catholic community, and that is why we need you. And I think young people have responded. They will respond in even greater numbers.
I think we have always failed to provide a compelling reason for the simple fact that the psychology of growth means that you need to break away and rebel from what you were handed, at least for a while.
We did.
Of course we did. Of course we did. And so, Fiddler on the Roof does a beautiful job of watching tradition fail to transmit to the next generation. But Tevye's daughters all found ways to move forward, and they weren't the ways that Tevye would have wanted. I think what you said is exactly correct. This might be the sea change that really helps our young people see what it is our traditions have to offer. What are the messages that stand the test of tradition?
What's worth committing to? Right? So our second question is, this is very profound. Thank God you're starting the answer. Has your own understanding of humanity, God, or the relationship between God and humanity been reshaped in any way because of the pandemic?
I'm gonna say not yet. I had a teacher when I was younger, as an adult, who said to me that that it's in the midst of a storm that a good sailor knows that it's not time to correct course. When you're in the midst of these swells that are threatening to overturn your ship, you just worry about staying upright. Once the storm blows over, you can regain your heading and figure out where it was you were going. I think that I would use that metaphor to describe my relationship with and understanding of God. I've worked for years to create my relationship with God. It has served me well. It has grown and changed in dramatic ways many times and will continue to. But I feel like I'm in the midst of a storm. And thank you, God, my understanding was good. It was what I needed when this began. I'm still relying on it. After this, when I've got a little bit more time to breathe and look back on what this meant, I'm sure my relationship and understanding will change.
Right. Yeah, that makes tremendous amount of sense. From my perspective, when I think of my relationship with God, it's so complex because of the many qualities that God demonstrates, right? Divine qualities. But the one that I guess it's not so much my understanding has changed, my appreciation has changed, is for the compassion of God. Because at the heart of Christian faith is the belief that God has entered into human life and suffered for us. So to be compassionate, to suffer with, for us as Christians is fundamental to faith. But now I see it up close and personal in a really lived way. So the fact that God is really close, ironically, in my mind, in my heart, I feel it more, precisely because the suffering in our midst is being responded to. Going back to what I said before. So it's a deeper appreciation because God's inscrutable in the end. I mean, he's beyond all words, beyond all concepts. And humanity's humanity, right? In the end, you see the best of people, the worst of people. Hopefully we'll learn from one another is the key, right?
Amen. Here's number 3. What do you believe is the best way to think and pray about the days ahead as we slowly begin to emerge from our staying home?
Oh my gosh. Okay, next question. No. My Easter homily. I'll give you my Easter homily. It was my attempt to grow a garden in Brooklyn when I was a young man, which was a disaster because there were 2 qualities I did not have then and now I struggle with still as an older man: patience and perseverance. I do better in perseverance. It's patience that I have a problem with. And I think regardless of what goes on in the days and weeks and months ahead, I need to challenge myself to be patient, even in my prayer. Because, Rabbi, my list is very long when I stand before. I have lots of things I'm asking for because the uncertainty is so great. But I need to be patient. It's answered in God's time, not my time. And I would love it to be in my time. So in some sense, the best way for a person to approach this is to rediscover the same trust we had when we ran into our mother's and father's arms as little baby. We were like kids. It's the same thing with God now. We just run in and just have him hold us and just be patient.
I've heard so many smart, articulate writers express that we are being given an opportunity. What an unbelievable opportunity, again, to make meaning out of the midst of horrendous circumstances. And I pray that we don't squander the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I have the last one then.
You do.
Has social media helped you and your organization to sustain a sense of community and maintain the experience of prayer and worship?
It certainly has, but in an unexpected and paradoxic way. The reliance on, and I'll include Zoom in social media. The opportunity to transition to a Zoom-based family has yielded its magic, in the same sense that that Shabbat and the other days of the week are only valuable because they go in partnership. You only understand how beautiful a day off is because you have these other days of labor. And similarly, Zoom has just been awful in its ability to fatigue us and to demonstrate its limitations, but it has gone so far beyond what I thought its capabilities in demonstrating how much the relationship does mean. And it has made us yearn so deeply for the return to human connection. Maybe not hugs and kisses, but proximity and the ability to read a facial expression the way we are now. It's so different than when you and I met on Zoom. This is so much more rich and so much more
Without a doubt.
authentic. And
Without a
so,
doubt. But you know what I see it as, if I may? It's a bridge.
Yeah.
It's a bridge. So what we're doing here this morning for New Covenant Center, if this technological platform didn't exist, we couldn't do that. And yet think of all the lives that are going to be helped by all the generous people who are going to respond to it, watching us, to meet this goal, this $150,000 goal. I'm hoping we'll exceed it. But without technology or social media, we wouldn't be able to do this. So it has its place, right? It has
Absolutely
its
right.
place.
Absolutely right.
It's great to be with you, Rabbi.
What a pleasure. Thank you, Bishop Frank.
Quick exit.
Yeah, we said everything we needed to say, John.
Okay. Just hang in for a few more minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bishop Caggiano. Thank you, Rabbi Tel Rav, for your enlightened and engaging thoughts. We also appreciate you both taking the time to answer the questions that were presented to us by friends of New Covenant Center. We need your help. We will continue to work hard and to fulfill our daily mission to feed the hungry, the homeless, and the unemployed. The people, I'm afraid, will continue to increase. Even if the coronavirus cases decrease, rising unemployment will result in more people looking for free meals and groceries from New Covenant Center. New Covenant Center is a primary utility in and for the city of Stamford. We have been doing this for decades, 42 years now, and the need to keep going has never been more than it is today. But tomorrow will be here shortly, and raising money now and in the future is a necessity for us. We're feeding over 3 times the number of people per day than we did at this time last year, as more hungry citizens have found New Covenant Center. I hope you will tell others about us and this webcast, which can be viewed by going to our website for the next week or so. And finally, another thank you to our staff, our volunteers, our donors, and those of you who are joining us for the very first time today. We truly hope to see you at New Covenant Center very soon. Meanwhile, be safe, be well, and thank you very much.
It's eye-opening. The whole situation is sort of like peeling an onion. When you walk in these doors and you see people, you're only seeing the surface of it. There's stuff that's going on that created the situation. It's not, I'm just a homeless person. I'm a person who's a survivor of abuse. I'm a veteran, a child of alcoholism or substance abuse. There's a whole story behind it.
I've been coming to the Covenant House for the past 9 years, 10 years, and they have a lot to offer. Showers, or they talk to you about different places where you can go to try to get housing. My plan and my hope is getting housing, or I'm working on it.
For me, it's been a very important experience to look in someone's eye who needs help and actually to say, we're in this together. I find that very moving.
Here we try and identify whether somebody walks in with a problem and approach him about whether or not we can help that person. Opioids, other substance abuses, alcoholism, we have seen a tremendous increase in all of that.
If someone's staying in a shelter, they have to leave by 9:30 in the morning. They may have no place to go afterwards. So they'll come here. We have books. We have an individual that comes in and brings chessboards in. We want people to be engaged.
They provide love that just keeps going on and on and on. They want you to excel and they want you to succeed. In what the New Covenant did was they gave you structure.
Everybody has hard times. Some of them aren't fortunate enough to make it through, and to be able to give back, that's the best. I wish that more people would give and help out. They would get a lot for themselves.
We were serving a mother and she had 3 younger kids. It reminded me a lot of my family because my mom's a single mom. I think it puts life into perspective because you don't know the fragility of your situation until you're staring it right in the face. It reminded me to be grateful of the things that I have and that could be me at any point.
When our young people come here and they experience how they can share their love and their blessings with those less fortunate, they walk away a little transformed. And what really makes me happy is when I see young people who develop a passion for serving because they know in their hearts that this is where God needs them to be.
Like a lot of people, I've been blessed, and this is my way of giving something back. When I retired, I promised myself that I would do this. This is the pantry of the New Covenant Center, and we have what you would find in a normal supermarket. The only reason this place exists is for the generosity of our donors. Churches, synagogues, civic organizations, they all contribute.
Fairgate Farm, we're a volunteer-powered urban farm, and we're really open for the public to come into the farm. You help out in the gardens for a bit, you go home with the food, no cost. New Covenant Center is one of our big outlets for our donation. All of our excess food goes to food pantries, just like New Covenant Center. They basically do weekly compost drop-offs. We do weekly food drop-offs for them, just kind of closing the food loop. And that's Escarole.
I've been in Stanford for all my life. Each year I see more and more people who need food. I remember growing up, we didn't have a lot. And my mother feed everybody else, and she didn't have no food. And that's always crossed my mind when I see little children, because that's the next generation who will be taking care of us. And how you treat them, and how they're going to treat us when we old.
As a father of 2 children, seeing a child come up to get food for me just made me feel like, how appreciative I was of what I had, but more importantly, how important it is to give back to the community and having a direct impact. If you truly give your time, your energy, and you're willing to, go to an organization like New Covenant Center, you can put a smile on somebody's face, and at the end of the day, if we all did that, we can make a change in a big way.
I learned at a very early age to give of myself, that there were people that were less fortunate and had a lot less than we did. That's always been a part of my life. There are hardworking people who work every day and still struggle with bringing enough food to the table to feed their families. And when I see these people, I think to myself, there but for the grace of God, go I. I am incredibly blessed, and I relish having the opportunity to share what I have, devote some of my time to lessen the burden of others and people in need.